Hi. In this video, we're going to be working with how to add and subtract fractions. Now, before we get started, we first have to ask ourselves, what are a few vocab words that are going to make us more successful in adding and subtracting fractions? The first vocab word is greatest common factor, also known as GCF. The greatest common factor is the highest number that goes into a set of numbers. What does that mean? Think of factors. Factors of 8 and 12, for example. What is the greatest number that goes into 8 and 12? So what are we going to do? We're going to list the factors of 8 and 12. So ask ourselves, what two numbers multiply to give us 8? Hopefully you agree it's 1 and 8, but also 2 and 4. What about 12? What numbers multiply to give you 12? Hopefully you agree it's 1 and 12, 2 and 6, as well as 3 times 4. What we're looking for is the greatest number that goes into 8 and 12. Do you see it? Hopefully you agree with 4. So 4 would be the greatest common factor of 8 and 12. So remember, greatest common factor is the highest number that goes into a set of numbers. A set is a certain amount of numbers that you are working with. In this case, 8 and 12 was my set. Okay, next vocab word, least common multiple. These two vocab words get confused all the time. But remember, least common multiple is technically represents counting by a certain number. So for example, the multiples 2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Multiples of 5, 0, 5, 10, etc. Right? So we want the least common multiple, meaning that two numbers are going to have a certain number that they have in common. We're looking for the lowest one. So let's take a look at the example, 4 and 12. So if we're listing multiples of 4 and 12, we're going to list them. I'm going to put 4 here. I'm going to start counting 8, 12, 16. Now I'm going to stop. I'm going to do the same thing for 12. 12, 24, 36. And it keeps on going, but I'm going to stop. I'm looking for the least common multiple that they both have in common. You see it? Hopefully you agree the least common multiple was going to be 12. So the LCM of 4 and 12 is simply just 12. And it could be its own number. So remember, least common multiple is counting by that number or multiplying by that number. And greatest common factor is a common factor that they have in common. Sounds good? Now the last one is least common denominator. Least common denominator is the smallest number that goes into your denominators. What do we need in order for us to be good at? We have to understand GCF and LCM. So for example, this is the reason why we do this, because this is the step that's going to help us work with these numbers. So what is the least common denominator of 1/4 and 1/6? So when you're doing this, you're only going to focus on your denominators, which are 4 and 6. You're going to find the LCM of 4 and 6. So what are we going to do? I'm going to list the numbers that multiply to 4 and 6. So 4, 8, 12, 16. I'm going to also do of 6, 6, 12, 18. Do you find it? Did you already find it? Hopefully you agree that the LCM in this situation was 12. So because of that, my LCD for this problem is going to be 12. In order for me to actually add these or subtract these, I have to make both denominators something over 12 and something over 12. And then I could go ahead and combine these or work with these or do whatever they want me to do as far as adding and subtracting. Okay? You knowing these three vocab words is going to make you more successful. But you have to be good at least common multiple, because you're always finding the multiples to help you find your LCD. Sound good? So you ready to begin? Okay. In example 1, we're going to add 1/4 and 2/3. You have to remember, in order for me to add or subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator, at least common denominator. Right now, it's not it, because 4 and 3 are not the same number. So what am I going to do? I have to list the multiples of 4 and 3. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the side. 4, 8, 12, 16. I'm going to do the same thing for 3, 3, 6, 9, 12. Did you find it? Good. So I'm going to stop. My LCD is 12. So what does that mean? I need both denominators to be 12. So what am I going to do? I'm going to set up two fractions with a plus sign in the middle. I'm going to put 12 on the bottom. I need my denominators to be 12. So what am I going to do? I have to ask myself, 4 times what gives me 12? I have to think about my factors. 4 times what gives me 12? Hopefully you agree, 4 times 3. Whatever you do to one part of your denominator, you also have to do to the numerator. So if I'm going to multiply the bottom by 4, I have to also multiply the top by, if I have to multiply the bottom by 3, I have to also multiply the top by 3. So 1 times 3 is just going to be 3, so my new fraction becomes 3/12. Hopefully you agree with me, because 3/12, if I were to simplify, gives me 1/4. All right, next one, 2/3. Look at the denominator. Ask yourself, 3 times what gives you 12? 3 times 4. So I'm going to multiply top by 4. 2 times 4 gives me 8. And if I were to simplify 8 over 12, it gives me 2 over 3. Once I do that, I can go ahead and combine terms. So what am I going to do? I'm going to add the numerators. 3 plus 8 gives me 11, but my denominator stays the same. So my final answer is 11/12. Okay? Adding fractions, subtracting fractions is a topic that a lot of students struggle with because they forget about the LCD. But let's try B. I'm going to let you on example 2 do it on your own, but for example 1, we're just going to do it together. So 5 and 7, same thing. Ask yourself, list the multiples of 5 and 7. Sometimes you can even multiply 5 and 7. That could be your LCD, but let's try it. So if I list the multiples of 5, I do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. I'm going to stop right there. Why? Because 5 times 7 is 35, so I shouldn't go any bigger than that. I'm going to do the same thing with 7. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. Did you notice that our LCD happens to be 35? So because of that, I'm going to set up 2 fractions with a minus sign in the middle. I'm going to put 35 for each denominator. And I'm going to ask myself, what times what gave me 35 in each denominator? So 5 times what gives me 35? It was 7. So if I multiply the bottom by 7, I also multiply the top by 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times what in the other denominator gives me 35. Hopefully it agrees times 5. So multiply top and bottom by 5. That gives me 10 over 35. Because both denominators are the same, I can now combine the numerator. 14 minus 10 gives me 4 over 35. And that's my answer for part B. Okay? So we just went over a trick that kind of helps us out. Multiplying your 2 denominators and having that be your LCD. However, sometimes it doesn't work that way. Okay? So let's try example 2. Now, if you want to pause the video to try it on your own, go for it. But for right now, I want to make sure that we can do this one together as well. Okay, you ready? So 1/4 plus 1 over 2. Let's do the trick. If I multiply 4 and 2, I get 8, which means my LCD could possibly be 8, but let's just verify. If I list all the multiples of 4 and 2, I get 4, 8. I'm going to stop because remember, 8 is technically the answer that I have right now in my head, but I want to see if there's a smaller one. Now list the multiples of 2. 2, 4, 6, and 8. Remember, we want to find the LCM, the least common multiple. Yes, they have 8 in common, but do you see another number they have in common? Hopefully you agree they have a 4 in common. So because of that, my LCD was actually 4. But wait a minute. Doesn't the left one already have a 4? It does. So guess what? You don't have to do anything. Your answer is going to be 1/4 on the left, which is great. But for the right one, I have to change it. So I'm going to ask myself, my denominator, 2 times what gave me that 4? Hopefully you agree it's 2 times 2. So I'll multiply the numerator and denominator by that same number, and I get 2/4. Now I can actually combine like terms. So what am I going to do? 1 plus 2 gives me 3. The 4 stays the same, so my answer is just 3/4. So that trick doesn't always work if the number can go into another number and there's an easier number. Okay, B. 3/5 minus 2/15. So what am I going to do? I can multiply 5 times 15 if I wanted to. But I'm going to list the multiples of 5 because maybe it's simpler. 5, 10, 15. I'm going to stop because I noticed that the other one already has a 15. 15, 30. But to be fair, I shouldn't keep going. Why? Because my LCM was 15. My least common multiple was 15. So guess what this means? That means that technically I have 2 fractions, but I know my second fraction is staying the same because that was part of the LCM already. My first fraction is going to have to be a 15, so I have to multiply 5 times what will give me 15, which is 3. So multiply numerator and denominator by 3, and I get 9 over 15 minus 2 over 15, which is simply going to be 7 over 15, and that's my final answer. Okay? Hopefully that wasn't too bad. Last example, example 3. Once again, if you feel like you want to do this one on your own, go for it, and then start the video once you're ready. Okay. I have 2/3 plus 1 over 5. What's the shortcut? Multiply your 2 denominators, 3 and 5 gives you 15. Do not list multiples bigger than 15. I'm going to check 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I'm not going to go any bigger than that. Same thing for 5. 5, 10, 15. So our shortcut actually worked out in this situation. 15 is our LCM. So make 15 on the bottom of each one. Because both denominators are different, I have to ask myself what times what in my denominator gave me 15. 3 times 5. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 5. 5 times 2 is 10. Plus 5 times what gives you 15? 5 times 3. So multiply top and bottom by 3. And my final answer is going to be 13 over 15. Remember, never combine your denominator. Okay, never combine your denominator. Ever, ever, ever. Okay, last one, B. 9 times 4 is 36, so do not count more than 36. Okay? So once again, 9, 18, 27, 36. 4, actually, I have to think about a little bit bigger because I'm going to keep going. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. Look for the LCM. Unfortunately, it happens to be 36. So what does that mean? Both denominators are going to be 36. And I have to ask myself what times what in each denominator gives me 36. So 9 times 4 in this situation. 4 times 7 is 28. 4 times 9 gives me 36. So 1 times 9 is going to be 9. 28 minus 9 is 19 over 36. And that's my final answer. And I'm done. So some fractions are going to be easier than others, but this is simply the way that we can get to be able to add and subtract fractions. Hopefully this helped, and best of luck.